for me, embracing messy is almost like my motto in life. I've always been a very messy person, but I was quite delighted later on in life to actually realize the advantage of being comfortable with the messy side of life. And because when we look at change and leading change in different organizations that we work in, we find that so many of the leaders are actually uncomfortable with anything that's on the, sorry, I'm just letting in Esther, with anything that's on the messier side of life. And the problem with that is actually they're doing their organization a huge disservice, because I would say that the number one thing to give your organization the edge, to give it the competitive advantage, is the ability to deal with the organizational health. Sorry if I'm distracted here. I'm just letting in people as they pop up there. Really, some people say, no, that can't be the most important thing to make your business success. Surely it's your strategy, surely it's your innovation, surely it's the people that you've got, the money that you can spend. But I feel that all of those are on the foundation of organizational health. So I'm just going to share my screen for a moment. My pity is when I share screen, if people are coming in, I can't see them, but let's just try and see. Let me go on. So really, there are two main requirements for organizations. Organizations need to be smart, obviously, and they also need to be healthy. And on the smart side, letting in Denise, on the smart side, with the focus on strategy and finance, technology, all those smarts, we find that many leaders like to focus there. And some of them neglect altogether the more messy side, the health side, where we're looking at how to minimize the politicking that's happening in the organization, how to lessen the confusion, build on morale, increase productivity, have a low turnover. And we feel that they don't gravitate towards that side. And I think it's perfectly understandable. I mean, if you think of leaders, or if you think of us in the room here, I'm just letting in Michelle Barnes. If you think of us, it's what we've been trained to do, to look objectively, to measure, to look at the numbers, to see the things that are safer or more predictable. And that's where we will put our energy, rather than the quite unpredictable, subjective, maybe awkward conversations that we sometimes have to have with staff, which may become emotional, which may blow up. And so we tend to avoid that. But I think this is the start of what creates more and more mess in organizations, because by doing that, you actually are limiting your choices, because you actually get smarter. The more we concentrate on the health of our organization, the smarter we will get over time. Because I think most organizations today are wise enough, they have enough expertise, they have enough knowledge, they have enough skill to be successful. But what they need to focus now on is turn to the people side. Because if we focus on the real, genuine health of the people in our organizations, as well as, of course, on ourselves as leaders, then we will start to understand each other better. We'll start to learn how to have those difficult conversations, how to manage the eruptions and the conflict that might inevitably arise. And from that, we will grow to actually exponentially increase our smartness. So really, as a starting point, I just wanted to put that on to frame us, to frame our, let me just stop sharing for a moment. Hello, Michelle, you're unmuted. A shame, and I see Denise is still desperately trying to connect. So really, the starting point is looking at emotions and getting comfortable with that messiness. And I think what exacerbates that so much in today's climate is change. The pace of change is so enormously fast. There's so much change being thrown at us, and change is messy. And so it pushes our buttons. And I think if we learn to accept that change is going to be messy, but we actually zoom out a bit if we zoom out and look at it from a distance and perspective, we might start seeing that that messiness actually has a purpose in the journey. So what I'd like you to do just briefly is think in your head of a change that you're going through. Maybe you've just gone through it, maybe you're about to go through it. So think of a change. It can be a personal change, like I'm going to get divorced, I'm going to move house. It could be a professional change, like I'm in a new department, I have to roll out a new IT system, whatever. So just in your head for a moment, think of a change that you've experienced or are about to experience. Have you got one? So I'm not going to hear them all, but what I would like you to do in the chat is to just write down some of the feelings that you have in that change that you're going through or that you have been through. So for those of you who aren't sure, if you look at the bottom bar, if you aren't sure how to write in the chat, you will see a little speech bubble which says chat, and then you can write in that if you haven't yet located the chat. Nice to see you, Michelle. So just write some feelings. You might have more than one. Just write some feeling words around how you're feeling about the change or you felt during that change process. Jot down in the chat. Great. So I've seen a change there, change from corporate to private. So some of the feelings that came up for you when you did that change. Let's take it strategy. I feel a sense of accomplishment. Nice. Anxiety, uncertain, scared, fear. Great. Timmy, I'm just going to mute you just because of the feedback, and you're welcome to unmute when you wanted to speak. I'm confused, excitement. I'm just reading from the chat. Trepidation, but honestly, it was a good time for the change. Fear, uncertainty. Great, absolutely. All those feelings coming through on the chat there. And I think that is so typical of a change. Uncertainty again. Uncertainty seems to have been coming out quite strongly, but we also had lovely words like excitement, anticipation that come out too. And I feel that it's quite important.
Sorry.
No problem, Jamie. I'm just going to mute you again, unless you are wanting to say something to the group. Are you wanting to say something about your feelings around change?
Sorry, please mute me.
Okay, fine, no problem. Asked to unmute. I think I've muted. Yes, I've muted you now. All right. I think it's quite useful that if we look at those feelings and we put a lens of a pattern of a change cycle, and suddenly they all seem to make a little bit more sense. So I'm going to share my screen again. Sorry, technology is slow on my side today. Can you see the change cycle in front of you? If we look around the edges of the change cycle, any person going through a change, or any organization going through a change, will go through these steps. They will start with loss. I'm reading the outside rim. They'll start with loss, then they'll go into doubt, then discomfort, and then there's an area which we'll talk about in a moment called the danger zone. And then they'll start feeling discovery, understanding, and into integration. So if we just take a typical kind of scenario, and obviously it's not quite as clear cut as the cycle likes to make us believe, but there's always at the beginning of a change, there's a feeling of loss because you're letting go of the comfort of the kind of things that you are used to and the kind of things that you are competent and capable at. So we have that feeling of actually being a little bit cautious or a little bit paralyzed at first. And then often doubts start to surface. Doubts that, is this change really the right thing for us to do right now? And this is where we start picking up, often in an organization, resistance and negativity around, why do we need to go on this journey? Why are we doing this change? Shame, maybe just let Denise in again. She's trying valiantly to come in. That must be about the 5th time, Shame. Then what happens is we slide often into discomfort. And discomfort, sorry, for some reason when I'm sharing, I can't see the that buttons button. Someone's trying to come in. The discomfort where we're suddenly feeling anxiety and confused. At this stage, The leaders thinking, oh my goodness, this change is an absolute nightmare because everyone, it's just the teams are being totally unproductive and totally uncooperative. What we're hoping for always in any change is that they start getting to the discovery stage where suddenly they can see the purpose of the change. And suddenly they start getting energized and excited by it. And they start buying in and they start feeling the possibilities, the creativity. And then they move into some small wins perhaps. And suddenly you've got it under your belt and you start understanding the benefits of this. And eventually you come to that awesome stage where it's just part of you. It's just like the air that you breathe. You can't even remember that journey that you went on in the change. Now, when we introduce change to ourselves, like me with my, New Year's resolutions, or when you're introducing it to a team, you wish that you could just go from selling that idea. Everyone says, Amanda, you've hit the nail on the head. That's a fantastic idea. And we go straight into discovery, understanding, and integration. But unfortunately, that is not what happens. And hello, Denise, welcome. It's so nice that you finally managed to connect. Can you hear us?
So yes.
Yes, I can. Thanks.
Perfect. I'm going to just mute you, but please feel free to unmute if you want to comment. Perfect. So what's interesting from an organizational perspective, but also internally for yourself, is to be aware of the danger zone. What happens around midway almost through the change cycle, just before we reach real breakthrough? Suddenly we start flip-flopping, we start swaying like a pendulum right back into doubt and resentment and discomfort. Or maybe then the next day we're feeling all productive and excited and you think, yay, I've got that person behind me. And the very next day they come around and say, I'm really not into this. I don't think it's the right thing for the organization. Now, what happens so many times in a change process that we've seen is that the organization gives up at this stage. It's too hard. It's too messy. It's too difficult. Some people are on board, but some people aren't. But what you really need to start recognizing in yourself and in your team is, yay, goody. It shows that we're on the journey. We're on this emotional journey, and some people are at different stages. Some people are still in doubt and despair. Other people are fully energized and forward focused, but it's all part of the journey. So it's really about thinking, how can we get people round and help them on the next stage? Understand that it's part of the process. If you see no emotion whatsoever, they actually haven't started the change journey. So when you see this myriad of conflicting emotions, which creates a messiness in your team or in your organization, it's time to talk about it. It's time to hear how you're feeling. Oh no, I'm feeling very depressed. I'm going to, this move means I have to leave my family, etc., etc. And then speaking to them about it, not shying away from the disappointment and the regret, and saying, we have to move offices. We really want everyone to be on board. And you are such an important part. How can we help you make it easier to come with us on this change journey? So you confront it, you talk about it, and you help them along. And people who are further along the journey can say, this is what worked for them, and this is how it helped them. And so we can slowly get everyone around on that change cycle. But that danger zone, even though we, for what is it now, 23 years, we've worked in organizations around change and around helping teams become acclimatized, it's still a tricky part of the journey. And I know if some of my facilitators are running a group process and it's midway, it's always midway, they'll come wide-eyed for their debriefing with me and they'll say, we had tears, we had drugs, we had people walking out, we had this, whatever. And what we always have to remind ourselves is that letting out of the feelings is so important. We just have to hold on to our hats, trust the process, because it's showing us we're in the danger. And lo and behold, if we can ride that, we come around to an awesome, real buy-in and support of that change process. I must say, I wish it looked as neat as this in all the change process. I just chose another slide here, sorry, let me just click. Yeah. Unfortunately, everyone's reaching their change at different times. So I feel, and I would love this to be 3D, this is still 2D, just as one person is seeing the light, aha, we get the change. The next person is going through another change, and you have to start another change, and the whole organization is at different points. So this is what I mean by messy. And this is what I mean by you just sort of understanding that this is part of the journey. So what I'd like us to do is to look, I'm going to stop sharing for a moment, to look at some simple steps around feeling more comfortable with that messiness. And what I'd like to ask you, and again, perhaps you can write in the chat, if it's difficult for you to write in the chat, feel free to just unmute and answer. How do you know when you are stuck, when you are feeling overwhelmed? So give me some examples of how you know that I'm in an overwhelmed state, I'm stuck. I think fatigue and tiredness would be one of the sort of symptoms. But anyone else, write in the chat how you know when you're against a block, you're stuck, you're overwhelmed, you're not making any progress. What kind of things happen for you? Right in the
Can
block.
I?
Yes, unmute, Lorata, that's great. Unmute it and tell us, yes.
Okay, when I cannot sleep at night, when I lose my sleep, I know that I'm stuck.
Okay.
Things are not going well.
Absolutely. That loss of sleep, that up at night and your brain's in overtime, for sure. Someone else? Write or speak, tell us.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, Shanta.
Okay, it's like I've got a task. Currently, I'm in the midst of something that's really critical, but for no apparent reason, I know I'm stuck at it. I've got another 4 months to complete it, but I will go and bake a cake, totally unnecessary. And I will sit and I will eat a cake or eat a few scones. I've gained nothing in that time. Absolutely nothing. But you know how good I feel.
Shanta, I'm going to come back to you at the end because I want to know, we're going to hear at the end of it if you really did gain nothing. We'll see. I'm just checking.
I gained calm and peace.
Okay, so here we've got less appetite to work, rotation, lack of motivation to do even the things that excite me. Yes, those things that you're trying to do suddenly lose all interest. Yes, absolutely. You know, a way that I like to see it, and all of us know these feelings, and all of us go, I'm sorry, Tembi, you've unmuted. Would you like to also say something that how you know when you are stuck?
Yes, please. For me, I live a lot in my head. A lot in my head, and often then I'm not actioning anything. Everything happens in my head for the longest time, which makes me lose more time. I'm not putting anything into action at that point in time. So yeah,
absolutely, very much in your head. And someone, I think Nopilo said she feels stressed. How I like to look at it, or just a way that I find useful for myself when I'm checking in. I'm just going to share the screen again. Can you see above and below the line? I try and work out for myself, where am I at this present moment? Am I what we refer to as above the line, or am I below the line? And all of us are on this journey in life at all times, many times in a day, depending on the situation, the person we're speaking to. We can be above the line or below the line. So let's just see what we mean by that, and excuse this quite full slide here. When we're above the line, it's when we have that feeling that we relate to the world just with a feeling of acceptance, of trust. We just feel that even though there's a lot going down, we feel present and we feel in the flow of things. And I think being in the flow is such an important concept that I think we Westerners often lose sight of. You know, we think of handling challenges either by fighting and confronting, or flighting, going away, avoiding it, or freezing. But flow is an incredibly powerful energy that we can also use. And I think the Eastern arts use so much of flow, you know, when they're doing, let me just let let this person in. Waiting room view. Sorry, it's hiding on my screen. I'm just admitting Paulina and Linda. You know, in Eastern or in martial arts, they actually use flow. You don't block your enemy, you flow towards your enemy. So it's quite an interesting kind of concept. And what we feel when we are above the line, we feel feelings like we feel creative and we feel totally engaged and energized and aligned. In fact, what is happening internally is something called entrainment. And what entrainment means, I wrote coherence here on the slide. What happens when we're in this state is everything, all the circuits in your body start syncing up. So your heart rate starts syncing up and getting entrained with your breathing, with your digestive system, with your hormonal system. All of them are totally coherent and trained. And that is what gives you suddenly this expansive view of life. You've actually, if we want the sort of biological term for it, what you've done is you've hooked into your what's called your parasympathetic nervous system. I know there's many coaches and that on this call who know this. That's really your joy circuit, your restorative, your rest and restore circuit. And so when we in this lovely state where we feel that we can allow things, we feel curious, we feel appreciative, that is when we are actually in touch with our own wisdom, with our intuitive wisdom comes out when we're in that state. Now, at other times in our day or in our life or in our hour, we find ourselves below the line. And below the line is when we're much more relating to the world in a way of fear and resistance and suspicion and panic. So it's very stressed. And how you know when you're below the line, as you lot mentioned, you can't sleep at night, the thoughts are going round and round in your head. It's high adrenaline, it's drama. There's always something, and you're almost stuck in your head. So often we're stuck in what we call that triangle. You're either being heroically saving and fixing everyone, or maybe that's not your style. Maybe you're in victim mode, it's everyone else's fault, or maybe you're in persecutor, villain mode. But we really are feeling threatened on a physiological level, as well as in our mind, as well as everything about us, because we feel that our security or our sense of relationship or our approval, those things are being threatened. And so we face the world with this contracted view. And no matter how clever you are, I'm sorry, I'm just letting in someone, Irene here, no matter how clever, how sussed you are, how good a front you put on, how well you can get through that to-do list and just strike things off your list and keep going. The fact is that no one can make really innovative, wise decisions from a place when they are below the line. And most humans are more predisposed to be below the line than above the line, because we are geared to look for threats, to be on the lookout at all times for threats. So it's really important to recognize and to start just checking in with yourself to see. Sorry, if I'm looking down here, it's because my slides are on a different screen. So that's why my head keeps going down to the bottom corner there. So really, it's not about you must all now get into above the line at every moment in your life. We're not saying that, because there's real wisdom in the below the line. It's about self-preservation, and it's also about us giving us a chance for self-acceptance, just to be aware, I'm below the line. And then, hi, Paulina, were you wanting to say something? Or should I mute you? Okay, perfect. And it's really then, I speak to myself, when I check in with myself and I see I'm below the line, I say to myself, it's okay, Mandy. You're just scared. You're just scared. It's okay. You don't need to do anything. You're fine where you are. And I speak to myself in that most loving voice, as my mother would have done. And what that does is my whole nervous system just settles. And I can then choose. Sometimes I'm not ready. It doesn't feel safe for me to go above the line. I have to still be in my head and worry about the issue. That's fine. That's fine. Where you are is fine, to accept it. But if you choose to move yourself from below the line to above the line, then you can face those problems with presence rather than with fighting or reactivity, because it is only from that space, that feeling of expansion and connection and creativity, that above the line space, it's only in that space that we can then decide what is the next right action for me to do or for us to move forward. Because we are all naturally resourceful. We know what the next step is if we can get into that space. And really, it's about a practice of being above the line, being below the line, and watching yourself flip between the two. So I'm going to talk with the slides just for a little bit longer, and then I will stop sharing and check in with you on this. But I think it's quite important, although I've said both states are needed in our physiology and in our being, both the above the line state and the below the line. The below the line is that fight and flight, that sympathetic nervous system that you're in, whereas the above the line, as I said, was the parasympathetic. Although it's a natural way of doing things, it's quite nice to be very strongly aware of what it means, the effect of stress or the effect of staying below the line for a long time. So if I can just share a couple more slides, just showing that to you. I think one of the key things that we need to recognize is that stress shuts down, incapacitates so many areas of your brain. So what happens, I've just simply used the metaphor of a reptilian brain, which is your fight or flight, the mammalian brain, which is your emotions, and the neocortex, which is your higher thinking skills. They're not exactly in those areas. Obviously, there's different parts of the brain that encapsulate them. But what happens as soon as you feel under threat? And of course, we're not only talking physical threat, we're talking about the threat of just what's going to happen next, what's going to happen with COVID, all those subtle threats to our status or to our sense of comfort or to our sense of connection. So when we feel under threat, the brain gets alert and ready. And the only way to get alert and ready is to shut down the other areas of your brain so that you can be ready to run or to freeze or to flee or to confront. So we are not thinking with the whole part of our brain. In fact, we are straight away not regulating, what's the word, dysregulate, sorry, my mind's gone blank, but unregulating our system. Because if your nervous system is regulated, what it means is that you feel an emotion, whether it's fear, uncertainty, threat, whatever it is, anger, you feel it, you give yourself the space to feel it. You feel that anger, and then it moves out of you and it's gone, and the next emotion will come. But because of life's pressures, because we are on such a go, 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 go drive, because there is so much to do, and because our society so prizes being productive and delivering, we feel we haven't got time to deal with those emotions right now. So we think that we just, putting it to the side, but they're building there, and your system becomes unregulated because they are piling up. Sorry, I didn't, did I go to, whoopsie. Let me just go back. I was pushing by mistake. Let me go back to this. Yeah. So what's actually happening, if you're marinating your body in stress, in other words, your levels of stress on a day-to-day basis are quite high, medium to high. What you're actually doing are weakening your neuroconnections in the front of your brain, in your prefrontal cortex. And so you cannot make good decisions. Let's just look at what that area of your brain, known as the central executive function, let's just look what it's in charge of. So that's the area of your brain that you need when you have to troubleshoot or when you have to correct an error. That's what you need when you have to come up with a new response, an innovative response, something that hasn't been done before, something that's not habitual. This is the area of the brain you need. Or when there's something difficult, dangerous, or when you can't use habit because remember that reptilian brain that we shrink to in stress, that's the oldest part. So that is habitual. That likes to do things with a little narrow focus, just what it's used to doing to survive. But sometimes, and certainly in a work situation or when we need to put our best foot forward, we need to be in our central executive function. And this is what is shut down when we're under stress. Another way to just look at that was, sorry, what I had on this, the screen for a long time. We all know Maslow's hierarchy, but it's interesting to think that stress keeps you in those bottom two rungs because you're fighting for survival. Your safety and psychological needs are paramount. You're just thinking, you don't realize you're just stressing about how you're going to get everything done on your to-do list, but that stress is building in your system. And so it keeps you in those bottom rungs. And obviously, we all aspire to being in the top rungs where we feel our self-esteem is strong and we self-actualize and really reach our potential. But we can't do that if we're in our stress brain, which really gives us a short, narrow-term focus. So let's just, I'm going to stop sharing before we look at that one for a moment. So there's the kind of reason as to why it's not just a nice to have to, Shanta, go and bake a cake in the middle of stress. It's actually an imperative, and it's something that we don't give ourselves the luxury of doing. Something in us feels that it's a bit self-indulgent and we must always be producing, and we don't just give ourselves that space. And so there's so many ways to actually shift from changing our state, going from below the line to above the line. And you all, by this stage of your life, have many favorite examples of how you shift your stress gears. Often it involves movement, whether that or body, whether that's dancing or walking or just sitting in the sun. It often can involve vocal. It's quite interesting how your voice has an effect on your nervous system. I know when I was a kid, my mom was forever taking me to the film The King and I. It's a very old 60s film. But in one of the songs there was, it was something like, whenever I feel afraid, no one, I whistle a happy tune, then no one will suspect I'm afraid. And there's actually truth in that whistling to cover up your afraidness. Because if you hum, there's no way that if you're in danger, if you're in fight or flight, if you're below the line, that you can hum. Humming immediately tells your body, I'm calm. I must be in my joy circuit. I must be in my, restore and rest circuit. So that is one way to shift into your above the line circuit. But the quickest and the most well-known, and which every course has ever told you, from your yoga courses, from your de-stressing courses, is using your breath more consciously. Because when we use that breath, it's the quickest way that you can change states. I know when I was at university with someone who became an actor, and she went over to Juilliard in America, the sort of big acting school for the famous actors. And in her first class, the lecturer said to them all, okay, cry up, cry up. And she sort of didn't know what that meant. And what it means is you must all start crying right now in this moment because you're an actor, you must cry. And of course she was, flabbergasted as to what to do. And the technique he taught them was you must just make your breath as if you're crying like this. I won't do it too long because it will change my state, but this isn't me crying. I've got a cough. But by just doing that to your breathing, straight away you flip, your eyes can start watering, you start feeling panicky by being in that fast breathing state. So what I want us to do is to just do a very simple 4 breath. There's so many ways of doing it, but it's just to bring consciously to our breath that we use every day. And what I'm wanting you to do is you're going to breathe in through your nose, just gently. You don't have to do a huge big breath, but I would like you, while you're breathing in, to just be conscious that your head is upright and that your shoulders are down. So you breathe in. You don't have to hold it or make it uncomfortable. When you want to breathe out through your mouth, And what I would like you to do as you breathe out is to soften your chest slightly and put a gentle smile on your face. Or if you don't want to smile, think of something that you just love. So really, it's almost like if I share the screen, it's really, I like to see it as like water passing over me or air passing over me. So as I breathe in, up my spine flows the water, shoulders down, and then as I breathe out through my mouth, smile gently or soften, in your mind's eye, soften the front of your body. So I'm going to keep silent for a moment, and let's just do that breathing in your own time. Different people will hold their breath, and I don't really want you to hold it. I'm just wanting you to be conscious of it. Different people will do it at different times, but you're breathing out, in and then out through your mouth about 4 times. I'm just going to keep quiet while you do that a little bit. And slowly open your eyes if they were closed. Now, in that simple exercise, some of you might feel a bit of a buzz in your head. And that's because we are so used to breathing shallowly that this oxygen is giving you a buzz. But others of you might just feel calm. But all of us, if you've done that, just 4 breathings, have moved yourself up into that above the line state. And if you just look at the science behind it, and this is why I just love the body, because it is such a phenomenal, clever mechanism in just the breath that we do every day. Let's just look at what's happening. So lots of us are starting the day in a cortisol, even when we wake up in the morning, but certainly midday, in a state where cortisol, which is the stress hormone, is flooding our system. And remember, when we are stressed, when we have that cortisol, it actually is wearing down our immune system. As we've said already, you can't think creatively, you can't feel connected, you have to just think about yourself. And when we're breathing without that conscious breath that we've just done, shallow breathing automatically triggers cortisol. Okay, so when you don't even notice, but your whole day, sometimes you just breathe from up here. You haven't ever gone deep into your lungs. So when we lift our head and we take that in-breath, straight away what starts happening, that in-breath and that straight head is triggering testosterone to be released into your system. Now, testosterone gets a bit of a bad rap because, if it's not balanced, there's a lot of aggression with testosterone. But testosterone is wonderful. It's what we need because it gives us confidence and it gives us the ability actually to take risks. In fact, they say that the perfect hormonal profile for a leader is high testosterone, low cortisol, because that shows you that leader can take risks, can be confident, can lead, but their stress doesn't overwhelm them. And obviously that's the kind of thing that we want in a leader. So that's in that inward breath. You are triggering up your testosterone. Now in that outward breath, straight away we start connecting and generating, particularly if you soften your chest and if you think of loving thoughts, we start triggering the oxytocin to be released in our system. Now, oxytocin is the cuddle drug or the cuddle hormone or the love hormone. That is that feeling of connection. And we can get it many ways, not just through our outward deep breath. We can get it by touching people that we love or our dog that we love. Women get it in breastfeeding. Oxytocin floods our system so that we form that connection with our baby. So really what I love about just this simple breath, if we do it consciously, we are giving ourselves, as I like to see it, grit and grace. The grit is that backbone. We're getting in touch with our backbone, and that backbone is about confidence. It's about setting boundaries. And the grace is that softness that comes in with the oxytocin. And that's where we're getting in touch with our intuition and the fact that we are all connected and that we are able to deal with these kind of issues that are facing us. Because if we don't balance We can get overwhelmed by, for instance, oxidation. We can get lost in connection, and we have to almost get back into our backbone and bring you back to yourself a bit. So some of you, I'll just stop sharing there, might be thinking, yeah, that's great. That sounds, sweet and gentle, but Amanda, I haven't got time for that. Zama, I'm just going to mute you. You might be thinking to yourself, I've got bigger matters. I have to get a whole new strategy in place by July in a challenging market, and I have to increase my global footprint. I need more specific tools with how to deal with that kind of thing. And my answer to the leaders that I work with, and this is just the starting point of it, is actually that is exactly what you need. You feel that it's counterproductive to slow down and even just take those breaths, let alone a holiday at Philippa's farm or baking a whole cake in the kitchen with Shanta. The thing is, it's in those moments when we are above the line, in other words, when we've breathed and connected into our presence, that is actually where we get our insights. Because when you're in that state, nothing needs to change in your environment, but your perspective changes. And you look at the world differently, because so you're still faced with perhaps an insurmountable deadlines and impossible targets, but you now approach it with your wise self. And that brings all the difference, because you actually know what to do. And if you don't know what to do, you know where to get the resources, but you need to get into that functioning prefrontal cortex and the central executive function of your brain, which will help you navigate that change cycle or deal with the changes. And, it reminds me of, I'm just trying to think, the book is called Executive Presence, Sylvia Hewlett. Sylvia Hewlett wrote a book about executive presence. And that is, what is it that leaders have, some leaders, that sense of what she called executive presence, that gravitas, that almost magnetic way that people want to trust and focus on them. And one of her key findings from her research was that it comes down to being able to get calm and then make a decision. And the fact is that decision doesn't even need to be the right decision or the wrong decision, because when you're in a crisis, it gives you such an enormous amount of gravitas. If you are the person who stands up and leads, makes the next decision and takes accountability for it, it shows such confidence and such bravery that automatically people are willing to follow you and wanting to follow. And if it was the wrong decision, you can get into below the line and you can say to yourself, oh, for flip's sake, I knew I wasn't up to the job. I always do this, or it's his fault. Or you can choose to go above the line and calm yourself and thinking, it's okay. Let's get curious. What have we learned from that mistake? How can we change course? What experiments can we do in it? So really, leaders today, it's about showing up, and it's about finding, I suppose, just pockets of time in your day. And they can be as short as we did today with 4 in-breaths and 4 out-breaths, so that you actually start making it a practice. And I think there's the rub, because people want a different kind of solution, something that sounds more flashy, not saying that we can all do like breathe and calm ourselves. But the fact is, if you don't practice checking in with yourself many times a day, am I above the line? Am I below the line? Do I choose at this moment to get myself above the line? Through whichever relaxing method I can think of. If we don't make it a practice, then when we are under enormous stress and really needing to show up in that crisis, we won't have the skills. We have to develop that muscle. And then we can sit down, and what I do with the leaders, then we can strategize, then we can make tactical decisions on how to do all the things that you need to do on your plate, because suddenly you've got the energy and the vision and your wise self that you are bringing to the party. So really, I would like to invite you to play with that kind of idea of such a simple technique of just checking in, giving yourself acceptance, and then realizing that life is going to be unpredictable. So let me face that unpredictability with a bit of calm, with a bit of presence, with a less sense of control. And really, like Peter Senge says in his words, he says, let go and let come. And I think that's a beautiful, comforting phrase. I think we all need to get into that sense of just letting go and welcoming and embracing what comes. And I am so aware that I've got such a room of wisdom here that in the last 5 minutes, and I'm sorry it's been cut so short, we started a bit late too, because I was hoping to really hear from you in this room. I would love to hear other tips from you, or comments or questions. And if there are questions, I would love other people in this room to also answer them. And let's just hear about how we get a sense of clarity in overwhelm. So anyone, please feel free to put on your camera if you want, but otherwise unmute and make a comment or give us a tip how you deal with the stress, or any any questions as well would be welcome.
Amanda? Sorry.
Sure.
Yes.
Should we go Nompilo? Oh, sorry, Nompilo, did you want to say something? Otherwise, I was going to say go Nompilo and then Philippa. Nompilo?
Oh, yes. I wanted to just thank you. You know, some things, they seem like they're very, very small, but they actually go a long way. That breathing in and out, and actually knowing that you're being mindful, and the tip of humming or singing, you know, I feel like it will really go a long way, because life can be so demanding, especially to us as women. And what you mentioned about sometimes we're so busy that we don't even pay attention to certain things. And then when we have time, then it comes back. I found your talk really powerful, and it is really going to help us be better leaders. Thank you so much, Amanda.
Thank you, Nompilo. Phil, were you wanting to say something? Or
of course I was.
Okay.
Andy, that was absolutely beautifully expressed. And the feeling that I get all the way through the talk is messy is also, I see it as complicated. And in the space of 45 minutes, you've decomplicated it with this incredibly simple technique. And I really think, Nompilo, we should get Amanda down here to do a workshop so that she can actually help us to take it seriously. There's also such an element in your way of simplifying that is about kindness. And some people raise their eyebrows at kindness, but it is the most incredible strategy, which could go corporate, but people battle to do that. And you've actually been talking about kindness to self, which then goes out as kindness to everything around us. So it was absolutely magnificent. Thank you.
I love that, Philippa. And, you know, just that thing about kindness or connection. There's studies done that show that the most productive teams in the world are the teams that take 3 lunch breaks together as a team a week, where they don't talk work, they just talk life. And just that, it makes them the most productive, because there again, we're building in the oxytocin, we're getting calm, we're relating to people, we're having connection, and that then helps you to be much sharper when you go back to the smart side of your day, not just the healthy side. I just wanted to not ignore the chat here, so feel free to unmute if there's someone else, but I just wanted to say, after flying to Cape Town, it was one of my favorite artists on the radio, and that was it. Totally, I'm really happy I allowed myself the absorption into music. That's beautiful from Shanta. Thank you. I'm taking a walk in the garden, says Denise, listening to birds chirping. Nature, absolutely, because nature's never up or, above or below the line. Nature just is. So I think that's one of the most calming things, to just look out your window at a tree or have a pot plant or walk. It really does wonders. And actually, I mean, that's a whole different way, but how we actually sync with nature as well, and those rhythms. Right, on that, oh, that's great. In Asia, they have a culture, if eating together as a team from work, yes. Craziness for one might be calming for the other. Yeah, absolutely. Just raucous laughter is a way of also getting into that that circuit. That's why it's become so popular to have laughing workshops. I don't know if any of you have done it, but it feels so artificial in the beginning, where you literally have to start like this, you know, and start laughing. But eventually you all, because it's so ludicrous, you all are laughing, and it releases all those endorphins as well. Any other perhaps questions or comments or tips from other people as well? And I love these gentle tips that are coming in that we so love to sometimes ignore. Drumming as a team, absolutely, also awesome. Yeah, that's beautiful. I agree. I was going to say how the music actually sounds in all the cavities in your bones, the resonance of sound, and when you do something like drumming that is so primal, it's really like a huge immune booster as well. I also feed the birds, simply take a breath. Yeah, I call them 5-minute holidays or 5-minute snacks. And I do set my alarm, and then I go out literally for 5 minutes. And sometimes it's just lying on the grass watching an ant, that's fine. Sometimes it's breathing, sometimes it's quickly going to connect with my boys, whatever it is. But 5 minutes holidays is sometimes all I can afford myself. But even that is helping me keep in sync. All right. Irene and Michelle, so lovely to see you both here. I know you came in a little bit after, so we didn't hear from you in the beginning, and Paulina, but nice to have had you on the talk.
Thank you, Amanda.
So, Nompilo, I don't know if it would be helpful if you like, I can send you the slides and you could distribute to the people that were in the group, or people can ask if they would like to have the slides, and I would happily send it to them. Perhaps I will just type in the chat here, but now I'm giving Women in Business. Let me just quickly, I'm just going to put my email address there if anyone would like.
Great.
Everyone in meeting. Okay, so it's Amanda at Dialogue SA. Dialogue SA.coza. So that's the organization that I lead. It's a consultancy that works with leaders and organizations in change. Thank you, Kanye. Thank you for your comment. So lovely for you all to take a little bit of a breather tonight in your busy lives to join us. I really appreciated having you at this coffee conversation. Perfect. I see someone saying, Zama saying she'd appreciate the slide. So I'll send them to you, Nompilo, and you'll get them to the people who are interested.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Amanda, for accepting our invite. And a special thanks to Philippa, who hooked us up with Amanda. We really appreciate what we've learned today. It will definitely, we'll actually post it on our YouTube channel as well to make sure that other people that couldn't make it today because of many reasons are able to tune in and learn from you, Amanda. You are changing the world because you're changing the leaders.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And a special thanks to Irene as well, who helped me to connect with you as when we were planning our meeting. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Irene. Always the absolute star.
Thank you so much. You could attend this meeting.
Thank you. Thanks, Nompilo.
Thank you. Thank you. We learned a lot. Have a good evening, ladies.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye all.
Bye.